Hi there, I'm Becky Hammond, founder and strengths maven over at Isogo and isogostrong.com. You already know that relationships are hard, so let's make them easier with your strengths. And welcome to the Isogo TV video and audio podcast. Here on Isogo TV, we are fueling family connection and work energy by focusing in on your strengths instead of fixating on your weakness. And today you are joining us for episode 89, which very well may be our last episode in this season's interview series, which has all been about using strengths. And you know what? If this is the first time that you are catching one of these in this series, you can definitely scan back and listen to just a mix of folks who have really risked and shared their stories. And these people are leaders, they're coaches, they're parents, they're spouses, they're just regular people who have all shared about what happens in their lives when they truly began using and harnessing the strongest things about them. You know, there has been so much change in confidence, in career, in parenting, in marriages, and leaderships, and healthcare organizations, and beyond. So be sure to check those out. Those are episodes 80 through 89 on Isogo TV. And as for today, our guest is Eduardo Villavicencio. Today you get to hear from the middle of his journey. And really, aren't we all in the middle of our journey? I think that's why his perspective is so relatable and yet really so unique to him and his strengths. Eduardo is currently a senior consultant of organizational transformation at Grant Thornton, but that's not all. He's also a skilled independent facilitator on a variety of subjects, which always amazes me. And he has a background rich in career experience and education from places like Harvard and Johns Hopkins University. And he's a dance enthusiast. He's a dance enthusiast who uses dance and partnership to talk about leadership and teamwork. So I just always think that's so cool. And today, Eduardo shares about the unknown challenges, as he calls them, that his strengths revealed, and then the career position and trajectory that really set him into. So let's dive into this conversation with Eduardo.
Well, hello there, Eduardo. Welcome to Isogo TV.
Great. Hi, Becky. This is so cool. I'm so excited to be here today.
Oh, thanks. I am glad that we were able to use the adaptability arranger strengths that we have to kind of make sure that we made this happen. So I'm excited for people to hear your story and how, and really it's a journey like all of us. But I'm excited for them to see where you are in that journey and what the strengths perspective did to kind of change how you see everything in your life. I mean, to me, it seems like everything in your life. So I'm excited to dive into that in just a little bit here because I want people to be able to learn and see from you just what can happen when you start to understand, man, these are things that are actually brilliant and true about me, and what happens in your life as a result. So thanks for being willing to do that.
Yeah. And thanks for hosting such a great space for people to not only share with others, but also in some ways kind of get more self-aware and have that reflection just shoot back at them.
Oh,
great.
Thanks. All right. Well, let's just jump right in and just let people know a little bit about yourself, like what's your family like, what do you do for work, and then we'll go from there.
Great. So we'll start with present, and then maybe
Perfect.
Past, and then future, something like that. Okay, sounds good. So currently, I work at a full-time job at a professional services firm that does government contracting, and so this is my third year at two firms that I've started at just 3 years ago. A company is called Grant Thornton, and they do a lot of work for the government as well as private sector, some accounting audit stuff. I actually do a lot more of the consulting. I'm in the department called Public Sector Organizational Transformation. And, they have clients all over agencies, Veteran Affairs, Patent Trademark Office, different folks like that. So right now, I'm finding a way to be a contribution to my clients in their IT department. And that's pretty much it.
Cool. Very good. And I know you kind of have a future vision. Of course, now you have your top five. Let's tell everybody what your top five strengths are.
Great,
Well,
great,
okay,
great. Yeah.
hold on. What your dominant strengths are, because I know that there's something you need to claim past 5.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I learned this last year in between my two companies that I worked with, that you have dominant talents, lesser talents, and all the supporting ones. So I like to tell people that not just my top 5, but my top 7 dominant talents are woo, individualization, ideation, analytical, futuristic. And then I add those other 2 that are communication and activator. So that's my 1 through 7.
Cool. So what we're hearing, show, I know that you think about the future and you can cast vision. You also have all these kind of seemingly disparate ideas that you have ways to connect together. Cool. Well, one of the things we've been doing, and I realize I don't think I have my deck. Oh, here it is. One of the things we've been doing on these episodes is just into one of our Dare to Dialogue cards here. This is a nice worn deck. I don't know if you can see it. We've used this one quite a bit. So I will just randomly select a question from this conversation card deck where you can, right? Yeah, this one.
There we go.
Okay, yeah.
There we go.
All right.
Little magic, virtual magic here.
Exactly. Ooh, this one hasn't shown up yet. Okay. What is the most important challenge you currently face? That's a good one. Why don't you just jump right in, right?
Yeah, that's a good one. So let me think about it for a second, because I wrote down, on my strengths, right? Individualization. I'm trying to see how I can focus one of these, or maybe 2 or 3. So, because my ideation will totally just answer that question, even my futuristic. But one of the things I'm really looking at doing is try to, tap into those other buckets. So my ideation, my futuristics would say the challenge I'm working on the most right now is really my well-being, connected to the 5 buckets, or the 5 essential elements of well-being. I really love before even strengths, I really love that book and that kind of model, and over the last 3 years, one of the buckets of well-being that I have let just kind of drift apart has been my physical well-being. And in other words, and this happens for folks, my schedule shifted from, I used to have tons of time to work out, and then I had a commute of an hour and a half each way for 5 days in a row. So, that physical then unfortunately affects other areas. It can affect community. So for example, if I don't feel comfortable getting all dressed up, to go dancing, then I won't go dancing, which then affects all the things. So right now, I think the one challenge that both Juanita and I are focused on is regaining the physical well-being. So we just decided 2 things. We are swimming 3 times a week, and we have now, using our futuristic, we have scheduled our a half marathon October in Detroit, and it happens to be a unique one in that you have to carry your passport, because you're literally crossing the border into Canada and back to the U.S.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Cool.
So how about you? What challenge are you?
The first thing that comes to my mind is or as I said, the first thing that comes to my mind, then like 12 other things came to my mind. So that was the pause. But the first thing that comes to my mind is I'm kind of this summer. So we're 2 months away from having a baby, and those tend to be my most productive 2 months of my entire career. And I've now had 4 opportunities. My 5th opportunity to have that type of productivity. And so one of the things that's a big challenge for me is I'm kind of reorienting my business model to be able to be international, because my husband, David, is taking a job with the State Department, and we are going to be living in places overseas. And so what does that look like, and how do we make that happen in the next 2 months? So is a big challenge, and one that I'm excited to face. So I think
that's great. That's great. Oh my gosh. And remind me, do you have a ranger? Because I know you have achiever, belief, and connected.
That's right.
I can't remember.
Achiever, a ranger, learner.
That's
belief and
learner. That's the 5th one.
Yep.
Great.
That's the one that keeps me bored and keeps me learning. Keeps me bored and keeps me growing.
That's excellent.
Cool. All right. Well, let's. You've talked a little bit about some of your strengths journey, kind of where it was, where your strengths kind of came into play. So when you when you first came across the strengths concept in a significant way, in a way that really impacted you, what problems were you looking to solve, or what were you thinking about most in your life at the time?
Yeah, so I would say there was probably two times. The first time in 2010, I had just left my job as a director of technology for a school system. And in that grad school course where we took the top 5, what was really interesting is in the first glance, right? When I saw woo and ideation, and I read those, I realized, oh, maybe this is why I was unsatisfied as I went from being a trainer or a teacher, technology trainer, integrator, internal consultant to IT director and running the whole $1 million budget for the schools. I saw that a lot of my strengths were in the relationship and influencing. And so the challenge at the time was, I don't want to be an IT director,
right,
but I still want to lead a project or program. And I think, I've been going to conferences and other schools because I'm not a traditional techie person. So a lot of my techie classmates from college were very surprised that someone ever, let alone 3 or 4 different institutions, gave me the role of IT director, because they're like. And so what I realized with ideation, with woo, and even the futuristic, realizing that my analytical strategic things were helpful in figuring out all the tech, but just enough of what I needed to be able to use communications and woo to translate between those users who really either were scared of technology but knew there was something possible, and those who could deliver, program, software, any of that stuff, but weren't always necessarily high on communication skills.
Right.
And so I think in that moment when I got the top 5 and someone said, oh, this is why in schools as a teacher, when you go visit another school to bring back ideas, you get alive by it. But then other teachers are wondering, why are you going to other schools? Or how is it that and I realized, oh, it's the woo. Like I can actually go to another school or even at a conference and connect with teachers, and I could really make everyone feel safe and warm to share their ideas. And then my ideation would be, oh, this math teacher wants to do something really neat. Well, I heard that this math teacher at this other school has done something like that, and connecting. So in that moment, I realized it wasn't that I was in the wrong career or even industry, IT director in the schools. It was just that I didn't know what was the best way to have that show up. So that's when, inadvertently I started a small business technology training consultancy for schools, which led to nonprofits, which then led to small businesses. And then that's how I learned more about running a small business. So that was probably the first unknown challenge that when I took the top, and that was just my top 5, and the grad school instructor, luckily she was the head of a little elementary school. And she was the one who said, yeah, teachers, you want to know what's right with you so that you can be teaching, from that place, and making sure that you're always conscious about some of the kids in your class will have certain strengths while others will have others.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't really dive deep into it, but that was probably the challenge that was at the time. Hey, what do I do after this?
Yeah. I love how you said that, the unknown challenge, because sometimes it's like there's like this underlying thing, like maybe I don't like this as much as I thought I was going to. I want to lead, but I don't really. Why isn't this fulfilling like I kind of thought it would be? Right. Like I worked my way up. This should be the thing now that I'm more excited and passionate about. But really you left your strengths were more geared towards the things that you were doing before. And then it changed as you moved up into the more director role.
Yeah.
And so I love that kind of unknown challenge. It's like sometimes when you understand who you are through your strengths, it starts to bring things up for you. It starts to say like, this is why I'm frustrated sometimes, or this is why other people are frustrated with me sometimes, right? Like you're not the typical tech person. Like, why is this techie guy like not like in his cubicle, right? Like, because he would like to be out making connections and socializing with people and using those, woo communication type strengths. So Can I mention one piece of feedback that I got from someone? So, and this was interesting. So 7 or 8 months before I announced I was resigning and leaving this role, because I wanted to go get a master's and I wasn't sure what was next.
I had someone said, Eduardo, do you know what your problem is?
Like, okay, what? No,
I'm
what
like,
is
oh,
it? Yeah.
only one? That's great. Only. And actually, it was such a great poetic piece of information that when I took my top 5 and got my results a couple months later in grad school, it made sense. And she goes, well, you and I are pretty different here. No, she's something like, you and I are pretty different here. You're a real smart guy. You and I are pretty smart here. However, you bring 5 solutions to a teacher who hasn't identified there's a problem yet.
Interesting.
And that was just such a real piece of like at first it hit me like, well, why wouldn't that teacher want to have the problem? Want to have a solution, right? Yeah. Well, that's a great idea. And it was when I took the assessment that ideation and I'm like analytical, futuristic, I'm like, oh yeah, I could see how that would be a problem when I'm giving 5 solutions, but no one has identified that there's a problem yet. Yeah. So, and that's, I think, what sometimes the word of consultancy is sometimes you're bringing hey, we have this solution for you. But a couple of weeks ago, I was doing a sales training about value, and I was talking about how the value, the customer, potential customer, gets your coachee, right? Whoever you're speaking with gets to decide what's the value, and that's a challenge in both sales and just in consultancy period. So the 5 solutions to a problem really hit home when I got my top 5 results.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it just starts to shed some light on why other people might not be receiving that in a positive way, but whereas it's just so natural for you to think in that way. I think a lot of people who are listening today have had an experience like you in terms of like they were exposed to particularly the strengths perspective, particularly the Gallup-Clifton strengths, and at some point, and then it's like, oh yeah, wow, this is cool. This does talk about me. This does explain a few things. And then, it kind of gets put in a drawer, or it doesn't really get fleshed out to say like, okay, people look at me like, what do you mean it's life changing? Right? Like, well, no, right. I mean, it takes a different type of step. So the next time that you kind of uncovered your strengths again and kind of were diving into that, what was that season like? Like what were you thinking about most at the time in terms of a problem or a challenge that you were encountering that kind of spurred you on to think through this again?
Great question. So I think, so for 8 years, so 2010 in grad school to 2017 when I started in the full-time, what I call the corporate world, which actually turns to be a subset of that, which is the government contracting world. I had never really thought of my strengths. I had told people, take your strengths, but not really understanding them, just saying, hey, it'll be a neat hop. So after 9 months of being in this one firm where I thought I was going to be doing a lot of learning and development work for the veterans, actually, it turned out I was completely off base. And so I left there feeling like, what did I do wrong? Like I was telling them, hey, I could do this. This is the kind of, but I wasn't even speaking my strength. Wasn't saying anything like, oh, woo, or activator. But I was doing all of that stuff, going to the networking events, trying to get a new role that was more applicable to me. And believe it or not, I was using woo. Didn't know that, right? But I get that. I was individualization. People are like, you really understand me. It's like, yes. However, at that time in that firm, it was seen like network, almost like the teachers, like the networking. It was like, you know what, there's a process here. And if you want to switch to different engagement, you want to go through the process. And I thought, oh, I was just finding out what that is. So I think I left there feeling a bit like, who am I and can I in this world, bring all of me? Yeah. And so it was going to the course to find out about Gallup, a 5-day, it was like a 2-day and a 3-day course together to find out about strengths, that had me understand that not only the science, but the art of really of understanding, being aware and being able to fully apply. And I think the biggest challenge at that point was trying to decide, oh, maybe I thought I was wrong for the corporate world or something like that. So the challenge was really getting clear, who am I? what do I love doing, right? What am I good at? And then what does the world need? And actually, Japanese, you probably are familiar with the term ikigai, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
That,
ikigai is something that
intersection of all the circles that goes right in the middle, right?
Yeah. It's they translated many times in these images, the Venn diagram, the reason for being.
Yeah.
Right. So an ikigai speaks to those 4 items, and when you have those 4 circles intersect, awesome. But maybe when only what does the world need and what do you love doing, that's only into purpose or something, and,
right.
but maybe you're so all of it. I wanted to. That would be, I suppose, the challenge that came to mind is, what's my ikigai? What is my reason for being, where I can connect all 4 of those circles and really get centered. And I think that week at the Gallup course, when I learned from other coaches and I thought when I learned about executing talents, I'm like, I don't have any until number 12. I thought, this is my problem. Maybe I can't get stuff done. And then coach said, you have all the talent. You have all 34 of them. The question is, why would you want to spend time working in your 28, 29, 30, when you could just be working in your 1 through 10? Right. And that really helped me start speaking to others about their strengths and about, and that's actually why when I went to that open house, I didn't have to shift who I was. I literally just spoke, said, yeah, I'm in this course all about strengths. And I found out here are my top 5. I found out they didn't change much from 8 years ago. I found out I have 34, a full set of 34 talents, but these are the ones that I think I could make the most difference in. And that's what led to this woman saying, wow, that sound like the 5 talents we would need for a consultant. Are you interested in working here? So the challenge, unknown, as I said, was really discovering, how do I speak and how do I have others hear, a request for supporting me in finding my ikigai or creating it if it didn't exist. And I think I'm so glad that that I know that your experience in Japan, because you actually get what that ikigai is. And I've been telling people all about it for the last 4 weeks, actually. So.
Awesome. So clearly in your life, you experienced at that point in 2018, a pretty dramatic shift in what would you call it? Kind of, well, first of all, it's in confidence because you were able to show up as your full self and be able to really explain who you were and say like, hey, if you have a need for this, then I'm your guy. And if you don't, then I'm probably not your guy. Right. I mean, that's like a different level of confidence that just, I kind of blows people's mind, I think. But then also you got a job. So, right. Like, so you kind of like self-confidence, but then also like a real career
result.
Right.
Yeah.
So how would you describe what you experienced in your life through your strengths? I know you've given us a couple examples. Does anything else kind of come to mind?
You mean in the professional world or just outside of it?
Either one, whatever comes to mind. I mean, I know you have lots of things come to mind.
As one of our colleagues, Paul Allen, would say, sometimes unbridled ideation is not a great thing.
We call
if you're not responsible for it.
The fire hose futuristic over here. Like,
yes,
the fire
that's
hose
right.
Not so good. Let's make it a fountain so it's much more pleasant.
Yes, a fountain. I like that. Well, I'll tell you, what comes to mind is that what I like to call, so woo and individualization are my number 1 and my number 2. And what's interesting is that in a group full of people, so I love facilitation. I call myself a conversational choreographer. Sometimes that's too structured. So sometimes I say I'm a conversational curator. So if you put me in a room full of people, right, 20, 25, 30 people, maybe they're a team, maybe they're not. But somehow my woo and my individualization together in a room full of strangers not only helps me connect one-on-one with folks, and it actually, I call it mimics relator talent. So relator is not that far down, but it's
relator. Woo individualization, you mean? Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And so when that happens, the experience for another is not necessarily overwhelming woo. And the individualization, they're not necessarily as threatened by someone really being able to get their experience. And so sometimes I can help in a room have that elephant in the room kind of show up and then at least push to the side momentarily so that people can feel safe talking about who they are as individuals, or maybe a challenge that the team has had, or something that just that's really blocked the human potential of the answers that are in the room from the team of people in the room. And I think that's the one area where I've seen, I can take one of these, like Wu, take individualization, put them together, and create the experience that I want and focus them. So same with activator. Like futuristic and activator almost by themselves come together sometimes, right? And that's the one I have to be, as I mentioned earlier, responsible for, because sometimes I see the future and I'm energized about it, and I want to activate into like, what's our first step? And really haven't had someone like you or my fiance, who's an achiever, a ranger, right, to be able to say, hey, what are the steps that we would want to talk to someone about so that they can hear, not an activator, let's get started now, but that they can actually see a plan towards that future that they can be energized about. So I think that is one of the things that in this in this company I'm in right now, I've been actually speaking to more of that. I've been what I like to call accountable, keeping myself not only confident, but also responsible for saying, hey, I'd like to contribute in this way. And if this is not the right time, you know, let me know when is, you know, and it helps the, I guess, inquiry, because it helps people go, oh, yeah, we're already this stage 4 of the 5-stage proposal. Right. So that's not, but you know what? We'll come back to you when we're at stage 1 or 2 of the next proposal, because we do this all the time. Yeah. So it's almost like I'm teaching people how to like even give me feedback that makes me feel appreciated and still confident, you know, without having them feel like, how do we, you know, deal with this? How do we, you know,
that you're like saying, disrupting and they're just like, no, now we have a conflict, a problem that we have to deal with, instead of like, well, actually now I'm seeing this as valuable, not at this moment, but going forward the next time.
That application, that's been really, and I'm not sure if that's exactly a challenge, right? But like, that's where it shows up is when someone goes, oh, you're definitely high relator. And I kind of giggle. I'm like, what makes you say that? And they'll, you know, and I say, interesting. Well, actually, this is what it looks like, you know, and this is how I you know, and then, so it actually helps me coach people. And actually, that's why a lot of people think, or they don't even know I'm a Gallup certified coach, and they actually call me coach, because people love how I can listen to them. And they're like, wow, no one really ever understood that. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. I'm just asking questions. And I call it being a magnifying mirror. I reflect back to them a more expanded version of themselves, or what they thought was possible, what they thought they were possible. And so that's part of how I kind of combine the top 5 or 6, 7 talents I have.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you have been really active in the last couple of years in understanding, not just understanding how they work together, but trying to then intentionally use them in a way. I mean, I think that's what some people kind of stumble over. It's like, yeah, this describes me, but like, what do you mean I could be better or get better? And some of these examples that you've just shared, I mean, that to me, that shows significant change. That shows like, this is how this can really impact how I interact with people. Not that just that is what I do naturally, but it is what I do naturally, and I could hone in on it. I could, instead of bothering people by what I do naturally, I could bring awareness to it. And like you said, a sense of responsibility to it, to say, I own these and I'm in control of, you know, we talk about the volume dials, right? I'm in control of dialing them appropriately in one moment or another, and really putting those to work in a way that, you know, it obviously it's benefiting you, but it's first benefiting the people around you, and then it reflects back benefit to you. I mean, I just really feel like
that's a great, I love what you just said. That's great. Yes, thank you. It reflects back. Like when the energy in the room is that safe, then for them, then I get to be safe, and then I get to be more authentic. And there's, even though connectedness isn't necessarily high on my thing, I feel like we're all one in that moment. You know, that I'm here, even though I'm a trainer for 3 days or consultant, I walk away and there's still a piece of me that was there, and will be there. I'm so glad you said that, because that definitely had me think about, the being able to build complementary partnerships. I think that's the one thing I've been focusing on lately is where, with Juanita, where is where do we build a complementary partnership? You and I met because of the Gallup Summit in some ways, but really we got to work together because I knew that if I wanted all the coaches in DC area when you lived in DC to meet, like I knew activator would help, ideation would help, woo would help, futuristic might help, communication might help. But what I didn't have is the how to get it done, necessarily. Yeah. And the achiever arranger that you had, we had our Jennifer Miller partner up with us. So realizing that I don't have to feel ineffective or less sufficient because I don't have 30 through 34 as my top 10. And I think that has helped me help others.
Cool. Well, just kind of wrapping up here, just drawing
Sure.
from your own personal experience, what encouragement or advice would you give to someone who can kind of resonate with your pre-strengths problems? And if we were going to kind of summarize that a little bit, this is an unknown challenge a little bit. This is a little bit of like career, a little bit of dissatisfaction, or just kind of like, is this a fit, or why is this not,
right,
why am I not jiving kind of like I thought I was going to? If for someone who can relate to that type of challenge, what encouragement or advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that the first thing I would suggest is an empty the cup process. So I think you and I facilitated once, and at the beginning of any session, when you show up, and whether it's an Excel training for some software or a strengths finder, people already have a preconceived notion of what they think they're going to be in for. And in most of any session, I usually talk about an empty the cup process. It's like, how can you fill I forget the parable or the stories about a Buddhist monk teaching about enlightenment. Someone wants enlightenment, but they say, here, fill my cup. And so they keep filling the cup, but then it overflows. And of course, same thing. If you already believe you know who you are and what you bring, then chances are you actually may be limited. So I thought what I brought was teaching. When I left, I brought technology. I thought they were mostly in skills and content.
Yeah.
And so what was great is that back then I didn't know this, but I really had a chance to empty the cup. And when I took the assessment to look at, top 5, look at not necessarily skills, certifications, master's degrees, look at like these talent pools, these filters by which you see the world. And so I would say the first thing to do is have someone empty their cup and they take the strengths finder assessment so that then they can actually, this is what my bias of what I was good at or not good at. Maybe I take all of that away and just look at these talents, see them as filters, of how I see the world. And also say the world doesn't necessarily see it that way. So if I'm, high on futuristic and I'm speaking in future language, someone with, not that they're opposites, but someone with context might be thinking, why are you talking about something that doesn't exist? And so similarly, if someone's in that kind of low self-esteem or questions of satisfaction or fulfillment, instead of looking at these are the things I'm good at, which is one part of that IKIGAI, right? Maybe look at what do I love? And one of the best places I think to find what do I love is in that top 5 assessment. Take a look, get your 34 if possible. But if you want to start with 5, there's a plug, right? If you want to start with 5 and look at, what do I love? And how is that related to my top 5 talents? And how have I focused them and how have I not into what I might love and be good at and the world needs and the world, and has a purpose, so, and it will produce income. Actually, I think that's the 4th one. I forget. Do you remember the IKIGAI?
I do. I actually have it on my other computer right on my desktop, but not this one.
Oh,
so.
Great.
Totally,
I think that's an amazing concept for, and I know how your experience in Japan, you probably had that just being, because for me, your belief always shows up as like your being, like you got a real core sense of your being and your family and the fact that you're 2 months 2 months away, I think to me, you're a representation of that Ikigai of like having connected all of those,
Thanks. I like to hope that I sit in that middle spot, but you can tell when you're off, right? Like you can really tell when you start to get off balance.
Right.
Yep.
And others can tell too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question about?
It sure does.
Just...
Yeah. Thank you so much. I love that concept of emptying the cup, that we have it filled up with all of our expectations and our biases and our perceptions and what we think we're good at, and Peter Drucker says most people think that they know what they're good at, but they're usually wrong, right? Like, so let's empty all those perceptions, and we can always put them back in, right? Like, well, I need those things,
exactly.
Put them back in.
Yep, completely.
But let's empty that cup and fill it with something that we know is what's strong and energizing about us, and that is a beautiful place to start with whatever problem you're experiencing, but especially if you're in the kind of like that career funk of like, man, is this what I'm meant to do or not? So, cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Eduardo, for sharing your story. And, we'll have to do like a chapter 2 in a couple of years or something of what happened next, right? How did that futuristic vision play out? And, as you have been living your strengths and continue to do that and seek career fulfillment in a way that honors those strengths and is honored by them. So very good. Well, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, Becky. Have fun, and to your audience, enjoy. Keep watching the podcast. Awesome. You never know, you might be on it next. So. Hey,
you know what? That's true. Let's do a little plug, right?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. We'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, Becky.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
What I love about Eduardo's story is just his passion, his enthusiasm. It just kind of oozes from his experience and his being. And there's a richness in the uniqueness of his strengths that led him to his greatest career happiness and then ultimately his reason for being. And I feel like that's something that can inspire all of us. I know that it does for me, for sure. So you can connect personally with Eduardo Villavicencio over on LinkedIn. I know that he and his woo would love that. And just like Eduardo, I really believe that you can be a part of creating thriving lives and families and workplaces across the entire world. Because when you orient your mind towards what's strongest about you and about the people that are around you, great things happen. Hey, and also, could you help spread this message? If you believe in the strengths perspective, or if part of you was impacted by this interview with Eduardo today, would you head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review? My friend Teresa says that it's not that easy to figure out how to leave a review. And when I looked into it, I totally agreed. So here's what I discovered. Here are the steps. You open your podcast app, and then don't go to your own episodes that you've saved. Instead, use a little search magnifying glass and search for Isogo TV, ISOGO TV, and then click on that audio version, and then scroll down about halfway until you see a section called Ratings and Reviews. Then from there, you can stamp the star rating, and then you could also click to write a review if you want, and then you're done. And then also, I would be really grateful at that point. So I'm glad that you were here today to hear how others have fueled significant changes in their lives by really focusing in on the things that are strongest about them. And I hope that you join me for more next time on Isogo TV.